Hey, happy Saturday, y'all. Josh is Severe Weather. I hope you're having a blessed weekend. Is winter really over? Well, the answer to that question is it depends on where you live. So I'm going to try to do my best to give you a better answer for that. Here is what the biggest weather maker for the upcoming week will be, and that is the potential for ice. So we're going to have another week of active storm track across the south. I don't think we're talking severe weather this time, but a much colder air mass moving into our direction. And so as the cold air comes underneath that moisture flow out of the west and southwest, there will be the potential to see some freezing rain and sleet across parts of the mid-south and the Ohio Valley here next week. And that will begin on Monday and continue into Tuesday and Wednesday. We'll keep an eye here farther east into the mid-Atlantic region towards the end of the week. That is a little bit more uncertain. And the models are giving me fits here for the second half of next week as to try to figure out what's going to happen in the eastern United States. My hunch right now is that we're wet again. We're seeing a lot of rain down south and into the Carolinas and maybe even Virginia. And this is a shift north in the milder air from what we saw in yesterday's model run. But I'm going to unpack it for you guys and give you my take. And nobody likes to go back on a forecast. Trust me, it's very frustrating. It's giving me gray hairs on the beard, as you guys can probably tell. But I would rather you guys be prepared and know what's potentially going to come, and then what looks like it's likely to come, and then what is coming. And that's kind of how it works here in the world of weather. So the current display of National Weather Service watches and warnings shows winter storm warnings in the northern Rockies as well as the Great Plains and advisories surrounding that into Michigan. This is from an Arctic boundary that's going to bring down some much colder air where we do have wind chill advisories in effect coming up here over the weekend for the northern tier of the country and then early next week as well across the Great Plains region. So much colder air coming down after what was a pretty mild January by our standards here. We'll take a look at why that is. This is the European height chart. It shows where the polar vortex is here across the Baffin Island area here in northern Canada. And cold air extends down from that in a couple of troughs. This is the big trough we're watching. It's going to take that cold from the polar vortex and sweep it south and east, while Alaska gets to see a nice warm thaw and the East Coast remains mild, but that will turn colder as we get into the week. So we've got a classic battle here between polar vortex, which is trying to dig south and west, and a massive ridge of high pressure, which is keeping Florida very warm. And that battle continues this weekend and into next week. So it's going to be milder over the eastern and southern United States for the beginning of next week. We see this ridge right here, no big supply of cold air, but what will happen is a piece of the polar vortex drops south, and then the trough digs down into California, brings some moisture in off the Pacific, and what we see is a moist flow with an active southern jet here bringing that warm, moist air up and over colder surface air, and that is going to set the stage for an active storm track right here across the middle of the country. And where the ridge is holding on south of that storm track, we're likely to see a lot of rain. In transition zone here from northwest Texas into the Ohio Valley, it will rain and it will probably fall as sleet, but with temperatures near or below freezing, a lot of that will be freezing to the ground. And it looks like snow chances are going to be mainly confined to the northern United States as well as the Rockies. Now, as this upper low cuts eastward from it just kind of gets detached here, and the polar vortex remains up in Canada. We will see enough forcing for some wintry weather in the southwest and west Texas in the form of mostly snow and mainly in the higher elevations. But this polar vortex is going to finally drop south and east. It's not going to go all the way down into Tennessee and Kentucky like what we saw here right before Christmas time. So we're not talking that kind of extreme cold, but nonetheless, it will be a lot colder in the northeastern United States by Friday and next Saturday. So we're looking at another big blast of cold air while temperatures start warming up here in the Rockies after a very cold week. So some very quickly changing weather. Yes, the polar vortex is in play. No, it's not going to be blasting southeastward into places that have had such a mild January, unfortunately for us who really want to see that cold weather. But there are signs of some more cold coming in here the week after next. With warm air on the East Coast, it's going to be another classic battleground. So we have, this is a look of, by the way, some maybe severe weather again down south when we get to the week of February the 6th. So some extremes here this winter, to say the least. We see the mild air building here this weekend across much of the eastern U.S. After the chilly start today in the southeast, it'll be warming up for your Sunday. But we also see this cold intensifying here across the northern Rockies and the Great Plains, with departures from normal of 40 degrees Fahrenheit on the European ensemble. Very cold air in place, and that cold is going to extend farther south and east. So we see a major contrast, a big transition zone scattered from central Texas right on through the Tennessee Valley and into the mid-Atlantic region. South of that transition zone, we're talking mild and wet and stormy on the Gulf Coast and into northern Florida, wet across the Carolinas and mid-Atlantic. But with that active storm track out of the southwest, it'll also be wet across areas that are going to be well below average. And that's going to set up the potential for some significant icing, depending on storm track, of course, and depending on amounts of precipitation. It'll be colder in the northeast as well, but do you see the moisture coming with the cold? That's another big question. We're going to have to take a closer look here at the Maryland and Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York City area here as we get later into next week. But you'll see it's very mild coming up the spine of the Appalachians here right on into Wednesday and Thursday, and cold in Texas. So this is a very extreme look, some very extreme weather coming here. And if you're on the cold side of this transition zone, you could be in for some pretty nasty winter weather here. And I don't think it's going to be all snow. I think it's going to be primarily ice, sleet, and freezing rain. Finally, at the end of next week, it turns colder here, but by then the moisture moves out. It's also much, much colder here across New England and the Northeast. A very cold Friday night and Saturday on tap. And that's going to be pretty fleeting. We're not going to see that kind of extreme cold lasting too long. In fact, it retreats in time for early next week, Monday and Tuesday, as we're back closer to average. And areas that are dealing with ice will snap right back out of it here early next week. See what I did there? Snap? All right. I like to have a little bit of fun. Let's look at temperatures on the European ensemble. You can see this cold that's up across the Dakotas. There's a pretty good boundary in here across the Great Plains. It's chilly this morning over the southeast and in the eastern U.S. I know I didn't include everybody here. I'll get to the east in a minute. But you can see it warms back up here over the weekend, where we're back into the 50s and 60s down south, 40s across the Appalachians. Sub-zero temperatures tomorrow afternoon expected in Nebraska and on northward, and sub-10 below here in North Dakota. So it will be brutally cold up here, almost as cold as what it was back in December. But you'll see it's going to be quite a bit milder here in the south and east. So we've got a pretty extreme region of temperatures that are going to be sitting near or just below freezing in here, from North Texas into Tennessee and Kentucky, and in the 20s across the Ohio River Valley. That's going to be right on through the first half of next week. And we don't see a lot of moderation in temperatures. It tries to warm up a bit here in Arkansas and Tennessee, but it's going to be a struggle until we get to the end of the week. So the cold kind of dives south and eastward. The warm goes northeastward, but in the middle here is where the battleground is, right on through next week. And that's going to cause forecasts to change more abruptly than what you might expect in that battleground zone. Do expect to see quite a few changes coming as we have the area of the most uncertainty really being in this region. However, the European's been consistent, and I do want to trust it more than the GFS, which has kind of been all over the place, kind of wall to wall with each model run. I'll show it to you, but it's not as stable as the European model. And same goes for the Canadian. It's been a bit unstable as well. In the Northeast, we see that temperatures are chilly today, but they do start to moderate some. There is cold air lurking, though, across Canada, and that is going to certainly be in play here next week. Can it be too cold to snow in the big cities of the Northeast? I think certainly possible, as you get an Arctic outbreak that comes in behind the moisture. And here's Tuesday into Wednesday. It's starting to get colder across New England, sub-zero temperatures at night here, Tuesday night, Wednesday morning. But that's not how cold it's going to be as we get later into the week. This is Friday, and you all can see that Friday during the day, temperatures struggle to get past the freezing mark in Philly and New York City, and they'll be in the mid-30s around D.C. and Baltimore and Dover, Delaware. As we get into Friday night, that's when the European ensemble brings some of the coldest air of the entire winter down into New England and the Northeast, with temperatures getting down close to zero this time next weekend in Boston and in Hartford, Connecticut, and in Albany, New York, and near Buffalo, New York as well. And we're looking at the potential, if the European ensembles are correct, for numbers to be 20 to 30 degrees below zero Saturday morning next week. It's 180 hours out, so this could still change some. The details will change some, but the trend is that it's going to be quite a bit colder here, with our coldest temperatures this winter over New England, over the interior Northeast, over New Brunswick, Prince Edward Island, Quebec, and southern Ontario with, if we look at Celsius, for those of you in Canada, 25 to 30 degree below average, or 25 to 30 degrees below 0 Celsius, except Toronto, which is the warm spot at 15 to 20 degrees below Celsius. So very cold air in place. It's going to stick around into Sunday and moderate some by next Monday. And we'll be back up closer to average by next Tuesday, February the 6th and 7th. So yeah, very cold coming. Here's what the European model shows. Here's the Arctic boundary. You can see the kind of the push eastward here in the lower pressures. That's our boundary. We are going to see snow in New England, snow in the Great Plains and the Great Lakes region, but this warm air surges northward, and a zone where we could see some light freezing rain here tonight, tomorrow morning, south of Chicago and north of St. Louis. It's going to shift southward some, and we'll see snow on Sunday across New England out ahead of that cold air outbreak. But we're looking at rain for the big cities and fairly light rain here Sunday night and into Monday mornings. More significant rain will be down south. Now, the next push of moisture comes out of California. We are seeing some light rain here in California and heavier mountain snow, maybe snow outside of Vegas, snow outside of Phoenix in your higher elevations. But as that moisture runs up and over this colder air mass, we see an area of freezing rain and sleet developing across Oklahoma and northwest Texas tomorrow or Monday evening. And into Monday night, we see continued push of light moisture, but enough moisture to produce freezing rain from the southern Texas panhandle to the north of Dallas. I think this does stay north of you in Dallas, despite what other videos are showing, and maybe getting up into Oklahoma City and then into northern and central parts of Arkansas, staying north of Memphis. And then by the time we get to Nashville, it's probably a little bit too warm for freezing rain. So this is the latest European. I'll go back a run so you can see a little bit farther along, and definitely in southern Oklahoma and along the Red River and in north central Arkansas, northwest Tennessee, the best potential for some freezing rain, maybe some sleet as well. And this could still shift some, but we're seeing a lot of moisture, a lot of rain coming through the southern United States this week, and temperatures hovering near or below freezing will produce the likelihood of some ice. Farther east, we could see light amounts of some rain and freezing rain in southern Virginia. We could see even in central and northern Virginia and southern Maryland a little bit of light snow. This is not going to be a big snowmaker, though. We're not going to really see the drought continue, but we're not going to see much out of this. And the next push that comes through here on Friday looks like it could try to produce some snow, but it's not going to be much. Rain may be ending as a light period of snow, not a big snowstorm for Virginia and North Carolina, like some of the models were showing a couple of days ago. And of course, that's why I cautioned you and said this will probably change. But this is one of those situations where it may be too cold to snow again in New York City. And just unfortunately, that's how the winter has gone here. Every time I tried to forecast snow for you guys, it briefly happened or it just didn't happen at all. And, you know, I can take credit for failure there, but really it's every model's shown something and then it's backed off. And it's just been a frustrating time to forecast if you're in Philly, New York, Maryland, Boston, Baltimore, Annapolis. Sorry, folks, just hasn't been great. Here's a look at the, I'll get you guys the United States here. European ensemble shows you the snow through early next week over northern New England and the Great Lakes. Next storm in the southwest, and then maybe it is showing snow in here. I think a lot of this ends up being ice on Tuesday in the central part of the country. And then lesser amounts of potential light snow in the mid-Atlantic region Wednesday into Thursday. This is not significant enough to me to think there'll be any major severe or any major winter weather. Same goes for Virginia and North Carolina. Yeah, a few models are showing maybe a little bit of snow falling in here, but it's generally an inch or less, and your percentage chances of accumulating snow are less than 30%. So at this point, not probably looking like a big deal, but something I'm still going to watch for you guys because I know it could still change. Also a look here at the total amounts of snow from the European operational model, not the ensemble, but this is just one model run, and it shows here's your snow moving across this band, basically from Idaho straight through Maine. And if you're south of that, it's going to be something other than snow, it looks like. In northern Pennsylvania, maybe a little bit of snow. We get to State College, Lewistown, Harrisburg, not looking like snow at this point, at least not much. And going back one run so we can see longer term, and we see kind of the same thing where maybe there's a light amount of snow, but I think a lot of this could end up being sleet over central and northern Oklahoma into the Ozark region. Same goes for southern Kentucky and West Virginia, and maybe a very small amount of some light snow here across Virginia, as well as Maryland, Delaware, the Delmarva, southern Jersey, and far northeastern North Carolina, which is better than what we've seen all winter. But again, it is not it's not that exciting at this point yet. We don't, I mean, we're threading the needle with, is there enough moisture behind this system and enough cold air to really get in place for a big winter storm? And right now, I think the answer to that question is no. The GFS has kind of shown us the same thing, but it's got some big timing challenges compared to the European. It's trying to bring everything out into multiple waves here. You can see it does not really wrap the cold air up with the moisture here in North Texas. So the chance for freezing rain and sleet is kind of fleeting here in North Texas on Tuesday. I don't think this model is right. I think what's going to happen is the upper low here in Canada is going to push out farther and be more progressive, and that'll mean this moisture here showing up in Arizona is actually going to end up in New Mexico and Texas. So I don't trust the GFS, which should not be a shock to anybody who's watched my videos here all winter long. It's got some issues where it doesn't bring the waves out, and I think it's going to correct itself with time here. We do see some moisture moving across the mid-Atlantic on Tuesday, so a light snowfall looks possible, but probably less than an inch in places like Fredericksburg and Wytheville, Virginia, and maybe far northern Tennessee, maybe like La Follette or places like that, but not really a big deal at this point. I think the bigger deal is going to be the amount of rain that falls down here, and maybe a little bit of heavier storms and local severe weather on the Gulf Coast as well. But you can see it's just so much slower here with this system. It progresses it through, but it's mainly a wet storm for us, which doesn't surprise me either. And then it's out of here by Saturday. So kind of on a mind of its own here, the GFS. If it ends up being if it ends up scoring a coup here and being right, then, I'll take my words back. But right now, I don't think that is the best likely or the most likely scenario. And here's what the GFS forecast snow looks like. And you guys will see what I'm talking about here. Really just very kind of minimal amounts here, maybe some light amounts here in the mid-Atlantic region by the end of next week, but not really a great snow forecast for those of us that want to see it here. I mean, New York and Philly get less than an inch if the ensemble is right. The operational model, will probably do a little bit better for us depending on where you live. You can see maybe some better chances here Monday into Tuesday, but again, generally less than an inch or two, except in the mountains. Some lake effect snow as well around the Great Lakes. That is more believable with that cold air supplying from Canada in across the Great Lakes. And then maybe a clipper system that cuts through parts of New England and northern New York here on Thursday. But you can see that GFS keeps everything back here, much farther back than the European on next Thursday across Texas and New Mexico. And then everything fades east. There's no accumulating snow out of this model run of the GFS at all across the mid-Atlantic and the Northeast. So I think something's going to have to give, and I think the European's going to get a better handle on things here. Let's take a look at freezing rain from the European model, because it's been consistently showing some light amounts in the Ohio Valley early next week, and then more significant amounts on Tuesday night, and Wednesday over Oklahoma, Northwest Texas, Arkansas, Northwest Tennessee, and Southern Kentucky. This may get into Little Rock. It may not. I don't know if it gets into the Ouachita Plateau, but definitely the Ozarks have the best chance of seeing some freezing rain, maybe the Boot Heel, Missouri, and southwestern Kentucky, as well as the Red River Valley here. Dallas is not included in this, fortunately, but definitely something I'll be watching. The potential for sleet with this as well over places like Tulsa, Oklahoma City, Fayetteville, Arkansas, and Branson, Missouri, lesser amounts farther east. As we go farther into time, though, the models were trying to show some freezing rain here. It's looking like it's a little bit too warm for that east of the Appalachians here in North Carolina and Southern Virginia. So good news there. Unfortunately, it's going to be all rain, which I'll take over freezing rain any day of the week. The GFS model, though, completely different look here. You see the light freezing rain out of this system that's coming through here tomorrow into tomorrow evening, and then maybe a little bit of light amount of freezing rain across the Tennessee Valley on Tuesday, but it's got absolutely nothing really over Oklahoma and Texas. And I think it's going to be wrong, to be honest with you guys. As we get later into the week, it's just not showing anything, just a completely different look. Sleet, maybe a better chance here in southwest Oklahoma, northwest Texas, as well as northern Arkansas into the western half of Mississippi. So Memphis, it's going to be a close call. I think north of Memphis is a better shot at seeing some sleet. Let's look, though, at how much is going to stick, and this is the national blend of models. It takes every model and averages it out, and maybe that's the way we need to go with this. It's not going to look like the GFS for sure. It's going to look more like the European and Canadian models, and you guys can see it's probably overdone with any ice accumulation in Michigan, Indiana, and Illinois, but there could be a tiny bit here. Better chance, again, it's showing northwest Texas, southern and central Oklahoma, central and northeastern Arkansas, mainly north of Little Rock, but could be a close call. And then some very potentially minimal amounts showing up because one or two models show that in North Carolina, Virginia, and that's still on the table here. But I don't think it's the likeliest scenario. So maybe something we'll watch. But these amounts are very small at this point. The areas I'm more concerned about would be in here from Texas into Missouri and Western Kentucky. And finally, we're going to look at rain down south because it's going to be a big story here. We start to see moisture returning here tonight into tomorrow across the western Gulf states and the Tennessee Valley. More heavy rain for South Louisiana on Sunday into Monday. That spreads into Georgia and the Carolinas. So it's going to be a wet Sunday night and Monday here in the Carolinas. And then another wave comes through here Wednesday into Thursday. And by the end of next week, this time next weekend, we are looking at about 7 states that are going to see at least 2 inches of rain or more. And there will be the concern, I think, for some localized flooding out of this, mainly across southeast Texas, which is cleaning up from last week's tornadoes, western and central parts of Louisiana, central Mississippi, central and northern Alabama, northwestern Georgia, and the western Carolinas. That's the area of concern for the heaviest amounts of rain. Also southern Tennessee, where 2 to 3 inches of rain could occur, places like Chattanooga and just north and west toward maybe McMinnville. Those heavy rain amounts are going to avoid the Northeast, it looks like, because that cold, dry air comes into place. So if you're around New York City and Boston and Lewistown and State College and Binghamton, New York, it seems like over the next week that you're kind of in a hole from any moisture. Everything stays north and south of you, and we just sit here and deal with some cold air. Really not that exciting. Talking again about that heavy rain, there will be a chance for some thunderstorms here today and tonight. As we get to tomorrow, there's a marginal risk for some severe weather over southeastern Texas. Not a repeat of Tuesday's weather. South Louisiana, southern Mississippi, southern Alabama, and western Florida. And there is a small chance we could see some damaging tornadoes out of this, but it's like 2% or less. It's not like what we saw last week. Also a chance for some stronger winds, 5% as well. When we get into Monday, the chance for severe weather pretty much wanes, and we just deal with maybe a few isolated thunderstorms, basically from Charleston and Hardeeville on southward into southern Georgia and northern Florida. But again, the Florida Peninsula with this big ridge of high pressure kind of misses out on most of the rain. And for those of you that want to see snow in New York City, those of you that want to see rain in Miami, well, the models say you got to do better than that. All right. I'm glad y'all enjoy my meme, maybe. If some of you know what that's from, then you're about my age. But please, if you could, like this video, leave me some comments, and subscribe to this channel for more videos. I'm taking tomorrow off, but there will be a community post from time to time. We'll be back in the office here Monday morning with more videos talking about this ice storm, talking about the cold in the Northeast, talking about the heavy rain down south. And also I'll take a look at the West Coast more and talk to you about weather that's expected over there. So as always, I want to thank you for your time, and I want to give all the glory to God through my Savior, Jesus Christ, the Son of the Lord. And I want to let you all know that that is very important to me. I'm called to be a meteorologist and to share my videos, but I'm also called to share my faith. That's God's gift to me. And I just want to read a quick passage from Proverbs 27, 27:17, as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. And that's from NIV. I believe some of the others show one man sharpens another, but this version says one person. When the word talks about man, they talk about people in general, manhood, but really personhood. And really, that passage means a lot to me because I could not be where I am in my life without the help of other people. Great minds have enlightened me to meteorology, have enlightened me to faith. I do not take all the credit or all the glory. And I think it's really important to kind of understand that people, when they gather together to get around like-minded people who are going to take them farther in life, make a huge deal. I know that I've had toxic relationships in the past and people who have let me down, and those people have not sharpened me like iron. In fact, they've done quite the opposite. But the passage means a lot. And I think, in this verse, it's just something that really means a lot. And I just encourage you, if you are maybe struggling and need some mentorship or some assistance from other folks, to get around other people, other believers, if you are a Christian believer. If you're not, maybe, and you're seeking like I was, 10 years ago, still find some people that lift you up and uplift you and can sharpen you, not people who bring you down. So I just wanted to share that verse with you, and I want to pray for you if you are in a position right now where you feel like you're not getting sharpened or you're not receiving what you should receive or what you feel like you should receive, and maybe you're in a spot of loneliness. because I know a lot of people struggle with that this time of the year, especially when it's cold out and people are indoors a lot more and isolated more. But the Lord is with us every day, and He wants us to feel His goodness. He wants us to flourish. He does not want us to sit here and suffer. We are going to be tempted, but really our goal is to be flourished. And if you believe, like I do, that eternal life is there for you, then by the time we get to heaven, that is the eternal prize. John 3:16, that we may have eternal life through the sacrifices made by our Savior Jesus Christ. And so I'm here to pray for you. Feel free to leave me requests. And if you can pray for me as well, I really would appreciate it. But I want to thank you all so much for your time. And I wish that you have a wonderful weekend. And we'll talk again on Monday. God bless you.